Hey everybody, this is Jeremy Dunham, Editor-in-Chief of the IGN PlayStation team, and today we'll be talking about Super Dragon Ball Z, the first of two DBZ games to come out this year from Atari. And unlike last year, this first DBZ game is actually pretty good. Last year we had a stinker and then a good one, and this year it looks like we are on the track to get two good ones. It's developed by Crafts and Meister, which is actually a development team created by ex-Capcom guys, most notably Noritaka Funimizu, who used to be a producer on the Street Fighter Alpha series, Rival Schools, Power Stone, games of that nature, so he definitely knows what he's doing when it comes to fighting games. The focus for this Dragon Ball Z game is a little bit different than what we're used to. Instead of the all-encompassing kind of stage-traveling, flying power beam struggles we've had in the last couple Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi titles, this time it's more of a in-your-face, close-up Street Fighter type of thing. And because of that, the action's a lot more visceral, a lot more frenetic. It's close up, it's a lot more similar to something like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, where it's kind of dial-up combo, punches and kicks over super moves, and it lends itself a lot better towards the hardcore fighter rather than the traditional Dragon Ball Z fan. And that's not to say that super moves and things of that nature aren't in there. They're definitely in there, and they use the familiar fireball motion in order to execute them. So you've got your Kamehamehas, you've got your Super Saiyan transformations. They're all in there. The difference, of course, is that it's not about the theatrics this time, it's about the gameplay. And for that reason, it's actually a lot more respectable than the Budokai series, because you can sit down with another fighting expert or aficionado and just enjoy the game for what it is, rather than having to go through this big production in order to get to a match first. And for that, it's definitely worth it. The good news is that the fighting is actually good. It involves some real strategy. There's a nice variation of moves between combatant to combatant. The lineup is a little bit small. There's only about 18 fighters compared to the infinite amount of fighters that we had in the last game. But that's because they spent a lot of time balancing these guys and making sure that they played differently enough and yet equally enough to where anyone could pick anyone and not dominate or be dominated. Another nice touch is the fact that the backgrounds, just like the Budokai series, are destructible, so you can walk around the stages and destroy walls and buildings and rocks and things of that nature, but it's not quite on the same level as the Tenkaichi series, in that it's not going to be things raining down from everywhere or smashing up new stages to go to others. It's really more enclosed, a lot more personal, and once again focused on the fighting. As strong as this game may be for fighting fans, there's two problems that come to mind. Number one is that, yes, it is a tactical game, it's fast and it's quick, but it doesn't have the depth of moves that a lot of the newer fighters do. If you look at even Budokai from last year, as theatric as it might have been, there are quite a number of things that you could do with your fighters that you really can't do here. Even if you can compare it to something really new like Tekken Dark Resurrection on PSP, then you're really at a disadvantage because it has nowhere near the moves you have there. So comparatively, don't expect a huge abundance of fighting maneuvers compared to other games in the genre. The second thing is that because the game is so fighting-focused, that there's not a lot of modes to choose from. So while in other fighting games you might get, a survival mode on top of a character creation mode, on top of an adventure mode, and then maybe some online play, etc., you're only going to get the survival mode and the traditional versus an arcade here. There's really not a lot other than that to explore. There is a customization mode, which is good news, but it's not quite on the level of, say, Tekken Dark Resurrection again, which is a PSP title, and that you don't have a huge wealth of options. You can change colors, you can customize moves. It's a great touch, but it's not quite as deep as I wanted it to be. Super Dragon Ball Z is actually one of those hard games to judge. If you're really into fighting games, you're definitely going to like it. There's things to enjoy here. There's a lot of really nice strategy. There's a healthy selection of characters, and you are going to see some differences between them. The problem is that because it's a Dragon Ball Z product, you kind of want more out of it. You're expecting over-the-top theatrics. You're expecting cinematics that are similar to the anime, and since this is based on the manga and more fighting-oriented, you don't get that. So it's kind of in between the two schools. It's not a hardcore fighter, and it's also not the over-the-top production that most Budokai Tenkaichi games are. So because of that, you're kind of left trying to figure out exactly where it fits, and that's a good way to explain the game, really, because you're not quite sure where it belongs. It's definitely a decent game and worth checking out, especially if you're into fighters or the Dragon Ball Z series, but because it never really decides what it wants to be, it's not on the upper echelon of either.